Hi folks, welcome to Crisco's Corner. Unfiltered commentary, and not your truth, the real truth. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for your support. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm not going to get myself involved in a decision like that because I don't want to get blamed. That's why these socialist countries collapse. Nobody wants to take responsibility when they see a blank upcoming. He was unsure if that offer was given to the president. I would have immediately. He's a 4-star general, for Pete's sake. You're not going over anybody's head to go to the president, except for maybe the Secretary of Defense. He should have said, Secretary Austin, has the president been told that the Taliban said, until we evacuate, we take over all security over all of Kabul during the evacuation? And if Austin said yes, I still would have sent a memorandum. I would have told the secretary to make it legit and fair. I'm going to be sending a note to the president advising him, if that's true, that we should do that. And I wanted to tell you, so do you think I was going over your head? Do you have a problem with it? But he didn't. He said nothing. The Taliban ultimately took point on securing the Kabul airport. What a huge mistake. And all those U.S. military personnel would be alive today. An ISIS-K suicide bomber bypassed the Taliban's checkpoints and killed at least 170 Afghans and 13 U.S. service members. Don't you think those 170 Afghans don't count either? That's not even counting the 10 times that, maybe even more. They're going to die and be tortured. Bourbon said poor leadership is standard and that bad decisions from the top, even minor ones, amplify down the ladder. He repeated a joke Marines often told. What is the difference between the Marine Corps and the Boy Scouts? The Boy Scouts have adult leadership. It was the kind of joke used to mitigate your sense of powerlessness from the bottom of the pyramid, Milbert told Fox News. In the military, the results of ineffective leadership or inefficiency or just minor mistakes are felt greatly at kind of the tail end of the whip. Austin, for his part, built a reputation for chronic decision phobia. Yeah. Paralysis by analysis, I guess some people call it too, you could. Fearing decision-making when he headed Central Command. Milburn wrote in Task and Purpose op-ed where he called on the secretary to resign. Chronic decision phobia. Where you want to be in charge, but you want to make the hard decisions because they'll come back and bite you in the ass. Can't have it both ways. You want to be in charge of extremely serious and incredibly important life and death decisions, and you ask for that job, you try to get it, and then when you get there, you do nothing? If I were to make decisions that cause a great deal of frustration beneath you, Miller told Fox News, I would imagine. A lot of us would rather have a tyrannical commander than no one who simply avoided decisions because of the tail end of the whip. That causes all kinds of confusion. Maybe since this video is so long, I'll do 2 parts because I think this is an incredibly important article. So, if I were to make decision causes a great deal of frustration beneath you, Mervyn told Fox News. A lot of us would rather have a tyrannical commander than one that would simply avoid decisions because of the tail end of the whip. This would cause all kinds of frustration. In the military, the most important thing you have is your reputation, the retired colonel told Fox News. It's not even rank. It's not necessarily authority at any given time. It's the ability for you to inspire people, especially those beneath you. I couldn't agree more. I like this Milburn guy more and more I read. Milburn flagged a program that failed horribly under Austin when he served as the top commander in the Middle East. The Defense Department launched a $500 million program in December 2014 to train 5,400 Syrian fighters a year to help the U.S. combat ISIS. The following September, Austin told the Armed Services Committee that only 4 or 5 trainees were fighting in Syria. The program was shuttered weeks later. 5,400. It just seemed incomprehensible to me there was no ramifications for him aside from I assume just being embarrassed. Can you imagine anyone not getting fired for that kind of mismanagement? But somehow he survived because he didn't take responsibility. The typical left-leaning mindset that it couldn't have been my fault, because they only think of one thing when they set up these things. This is our goal, and that's the only thing that's going to happen. Anything else that happens in between that derails everything is not my fault. And it couldn't have been thought of. Couldn't have been imagined to happen. Unbelievable. Milburn said it probably caused irreparable damage to Central Command and to the military. I would think so. What we saw during the closing days in the fall of Cabal, who can deny that those images were disastrous to our credibility as a nation, Milburn added. The Pentagon declined to comment. Matt Leach, I'll tell you, I was 65 years old last week. I am now officially a senior citizen. So now I can say and do things and get away with it because I'm a senior. This Millie, when I saw the clip, I didn't see it live, but I saw the clip that said to a congressional committee that he was also very, very interested in why there was white rage. I went, what? Kissing their ass? Is he just telling them what they want to hear? Or does this guy actually believe it? I'm not going to call him a moron because he's a 4-star general. He served his country probably half of my lifetime, over 30 years. I just don't get it. And this is what happens when left-leaning progressive ideology sneaks in. I'm not talking about woke stuff. I'm talking about the premise, the ultimate premise that you'll take responsibility for anything that goes wrong. It's not your responsibility. Everybody gets a trophy. You did the best you could. No, we're talking about life and death decisions that affect thousands, if not millions of people. And yet, there's no accountability. None. Absolutely none. Those of you who are going to freak out when I use this example because it was from the Confederates of the United States, but it has nothing to do with slavery. It has to do with honor and integrity. The third day of Gettysburg, Robert E. Lee ordered the entire center to go against the Union Center, figured he'd break them. Almost everyone knew that it would be a disaster. But no one had the guts, really, to tell him no. Longstreet was probably the only one that kept saying, sir, we can't do this. Sir, we can't do this. Lee, of course, in history before that, would think they were invincible, that God was on their side. Of course, war was different back then. It was much more personable, man on man, people walking into cannon fire. It was horrendous. And he asked those men to walk across 2 miles plus of open field with cannon fire on them the whole way, shrapnel, back what they used to call in the old days, canister, hot pieces of metal flying through hundreds of miles an hour, ripping people to pieces, and yet they did it. And many knew it was the wrong thing to do, but the point I'm trying to make is this. At the end, when there was a disaster, and they considered the high water mark of the Confederacy, of the war for that matter, when they come staggering back, and 15, 20,000 plus men are butchered or dead, Lee said, he turned in his resignation to the president of the Confederacy and said, it was my fault. I did it. He told his men right there on the battlefield, it is all my fault. He didn't pretend it was somebody else's fault. He didn't say it was a giant mistake and not take blame for it or personal responsibility. Whether you like Robert E. Lee or not, you have to admire the fact you're talking about personal responsibility for your successes as well as your screw-ups. And yet, these three here, when it all come down to it, said this. These three, when it all came down to it, said nothing to the president. I understand Austin works at his behest. He's in the center there. I just don't understand. Austin has more than enough money. Who doesn't want to be in charge? The Secretary of Defense. That's a huge deal. In the years and years of experience that he has in all kinds of matters. But now he's the Secretary of Defense, and he has decision-making phobia. That I will not stick my neck out. Because this thing goes wrong, it's my head that's going to get chopped off. And the same with the two generals. My God, my God. I don't want to say these guys aren't real men. But what happened to the other real men in the military prior to this? The other real men said, no, sir, this will not work. And had a chance to resign and protest. Because it was so incredibly obvious. It was so incredibly obvious to everyone. Everyone. That this was going to be a gigantic disaster. Not even, we'll take away the loss of life. $85 billion plus of equipment is now going to be used against our own men and women in the military. Do you have any idea how ridiculous that is? And how just a gigantic up beyond recognition. I mean, even the fall of Saigon went smoother than that. It's unbelievable. What is the old saying? Everyone is guilty, so nobody's to blame. Incredible. Incredible. Well, folks, there it is. Just go down in history. The one good silver lining out of all of this is maybe sometime in the future when we're in a position like this, hopefully not a 20-year war that it can amount to nothing, but spending trillions of dollars and giving it to the companies that make these products for war. I have no problem with the military. I have no problem with the United States fleshing its power to crush out evil. I have no issue with that. What I have issue with is these endless, pointless wars that end up being worse than when you started. We're the most powerful military on earth and the richest nation on earth. And we can't do better than this. Honestly. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.